Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live session on GRC automation in 2026. This is RegScale's second year doing a deep dive session around our annual State of Continuous Controls Monitoring report. And this year, we are really excited to get into the key challenges and solutions around automating GRC, continuous monitoring, AI. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. All attendees automatically have their video and audio off. We do have a Q&A feature to ask panelists a question, so please do share your questions there. If you'd like to enable captions, click Show Captions in the toolbar. And lastly, this webinar will be available on demand, and it will be sent to your email after we wrap up. Let's move on to introductions. So I'm Gabrielle Hovenden. I'm the Content Marketing Manager at RegScale, and I'm also the author of this year's State of CCM report. I've spent the last several years in cybersecurity with a background in academia and journalism before that. And it's been really great diving into the data around GRC trends this year. Today, I'm joined by three of our expert solution advisors. We have Gianna Price, Shannon Williams, and Will Jenick. I will let them all introduce themselves and then we'll dive in. Gianna, let's start with you.
Hi, yes, my name is Gianna Price. I'm a senior solution advisor here at RegScale. I've got a background in cybersecurity program development, largely in the Department of War. And I'm excited to be here to talk to you about continuous controls monitoring today.
Hey, so I'm Sharon Williams. I'm also a senior solution advisor for RegScale. I just completed 2 years of the organization, and my background is also cybersecurity related. So I've spent a good amount of time there before coming over to the compliance and solutioning side.
My name is Will. I'm a solution advisor here at RegScale and been here for about 1.5 years. My background is in cyber risk consulting in the public and private sector.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And without further ado, we will dive right in. So I want to begin today with a brief overview of the 2026 State of CCM report. The report is available to download via the QR code on this slide. We'll also share it again at the end of the presentation if you haven't downloaded it yet. This year, we surveyed over 250 InfoSec leaders from 10 industries to produce our second annual report on continuous controls monitoring with key findings on regulatory complexity, AI and automation ROI, board reporting, barriers to modernizing GRC, and a lot more. Today, our solution advisors are going to be specifically digging into some of the top obstacles to automation in GRC that we identified in the report. And they'll be looking at it through the lens of what we're actually seeing in practice with our customers every day. They'll also share some of their insider advice and a roadmap for implementing and accelerating your GRC automation program. Let's begin with the first obstacle on our next slide, increased regulatory complexity. So this is a challenge that will surprise pretty much no one who works in GRC. We all know that the compliance landscape is no longer confined to a few traditional frameworks. Organizations are obviously rapidly adding new requirements, whether those are geographical from global operations, whether they're industry-based, even AI-related. What our research found this year is that over 1/3 of companies are dedicating more than 50% of their compliance workload to requirements introduced just in the last 5 years. So it's a pretty huge burden from regulations that are really less than half a decade old in most cases. We also found that nearly 3/4 of organizations across industries are juggling more than half a dozen different compliance frameworks. So obviously, really heightened regulatory complexity. And I'd like to turn it over to our team to discuss, just what they're seeing in terms of increased regulatory complexity across the industry. Shannon, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll definitely take that. So looking at our client base, a lot of our clients have multiple different frameworks that they're trying to adhere to, or at least answer to in some type of way, be it they're already in some type of industry that has some type of regulatory requirement to answer, or their sales team is looking at expanding their business into a new industry and trying to understand what kind of regulatory complexity that they'll have to navigate through. So trying to answer these questions as quick as possible to be able to enable that kind of business and support that business. But what we found, what we see across the industry is that to be able to accomplish this, a lot of our clients and a lot of people start by just doing this giant mapping exercise between all of the frameworks. And they might have answered to one framework and they're saying, how can I take that one framework and answer across? And they do this giant mapping exercise that takes months to be able to execute cleanly. It ends up being a little bit stagnant because it's in an Excel document. And so it ends up being this giant burden to maintain the mapping. And particularly, I think it fails or falls short because frameworks are never one-to-one. Like even in NIST, we can see in 800, 171, and 853, like there's no controls that of like AC1 equals 331 over here. There's something like that. So at best, you're getting a, I'm compliant here, and that kind of translates to maybe one or two controls, but you're not doing a full deep dive when you're doing that kind of mapping exercise. So, I sit here and I understand that problem, being able to support our business to be able to answer across all these different regulatory frameworks, and the challenges that lives today in regards to that mapping and how traditionally people have been doing that is quite stagnant and not up to what people would expect of businesses today, particularly technology teams.
Sorry, coming off mute here. Yeah, I completely agree. Have some similar thoughts on that. I mean, and it's funny because over the last 5 years, we've heard about all of these like framework harmonization initiatives and things like that. And we hope that those continue, right? So that we don't have this redundancy in the industry, but it's just not taking off as fast, I think, as people would hope. And I think for a while, this complexity was reserved to like large global organizations, and that's just not the case anymore. Like you talked about with 171 and then having to comply with 853, or you throw in FedRAMP. So, we see that a lot in the defense industrial base, where companies are offering both a product and service to the Department of War. And they're really struggling with that mapping activity that you were talking about, because at the end of the day, yeah, there's some similarities, right, across, especially any of the NIST-based compliance frameworks. But, what's the drastic change that catches people up is the scope, right? So you got 171 is targeted, very specifically at the people, processes, and technology that process, store, transmit, display, controlled and classified information. Then you have, FedRAMP specifically focused at your as a service offering that you're trying to sell to government. And then you just have your own corporate compliance initiatives, right? Like, before CMMC came out, a lot of companies went forward with, the ISO standards, and, how do they leverage all of that work and those policies and procedures that they've already put in place to accommodate all of these other compliance frameworks versus, to avoid having to address each one specifically and add all that unnecessary redundancy.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. So we have all these frameworks, they overlap, but they don't map one-to-one. So customer comes to us and they have these different frameworks and they have a security plan maybe in one, and they want to use their implementation statements or their policies and standards to answer their other framework. Maybe it's NIST or ISO. And I think where we excel really natively in our platform is RegML, which is our AI capability. So you can ingest those standards and policies. The content already exists there, and you could generate implementation statements for your FedRAMP or your ISO security plan. So I think the answer really is native GRC, native AI capabilities and GRC platforms.
Yeah, and I think, Will, that's a great segue into the next challenge that we found both in the report and that we find in practice, which is how exactly you integrate that AI in sort of an accountable and effective way. every single organization that we surveyed in this year's research reported positive ROI from introducing AI in their GRC program, which likely doesn't surprise many people. But I think there is a misconception, right, that AI eliminates the need for human oversight, that you can just get your AI up and running and then, you can be hands off. And I think what we've found is that organizations really need to identify where AI and automation can deliver the most value versus where that human judgment really remains critical. Um, and Will, I think I'm going to throw it back to you. I think you've seen this directly in your experience with customers. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see AI in these platforms as a force multiplier, but not a replacement of a team member or human being. It saves a lot of time. You can generate statements and content, have your team focus on uh, reviewing what those implementation statements are the details correct. Don't focus on grammar or structure. I think AI does a good point of doing that, but good use case here is we have response automation. So customers will receive questionnaires from their their customers, so they'll receive that. They have a list of questions they can feed into our platform and point it at a security plan or a policy or standard and generate answers to those questions. Saves a lot of time, but we always say you still need to look at the content that's generated because it can hallucinate. So saves time, but you still need that human element to review those statements.
Yeah. And let's be honest, people in this industry have been trying to find the easy button for decades. And so I think that there is a real appeal or hope, I guess, that AI is just going to come and take this compliance burden away, which, we all wish was the case, but unfortunately we're not there yet. So there's obviously, like you said, a lot that AI can help with. I mean, back in the day, you get your compliance package rejected if you were in the wrong font, So, like you said, all the grammatical things, making sure that it's properly interpreting your policies and procedures, but we definitely need to keep that human in the loop at every stage of the process. Just if for sanity's sake, and most of these compliance frameworks are also have legal repercussions, so there needs to be some accountability. So kind of going off of the second bullet, and trying to figure out where you're going to get the most value. There, like I said, the reason we need the experts in the process is because they have that contextual understanding of the organization and the associated risks that they face. But I think, the blending of AI and human resources is really going to enable us to tackle security and compliance like we've never seen before, because, we're going to continue to have a shortage of expertise in the field. That's just, it is what it is. But if we can leverage the expertise along with the AI, like you said, let the AI do some of the more monotonous regurgitations of things that have already been vetted, and let the expert do kind of the real analysis and risk management for the organization.
I would say my thoughts really align directly with Will and Gianna here, and the fact that hey, AI is great for parsing through that data, being able to pick out the bits and pieces to answer. But you really need a human to clean it up at the end of the day and have that oversight. In addition to the word accountability, particularly because we have regulatory obligations to this information that we're publishing, right? I think we have to look at use of AI responsibly. And I hear across our industry in cybersecurity and technology in general that AI is here, and we're getting pressure from our executive teams to put AI in everything. But I think the smart and responsible thing to do is to keep the human in the loop for the time being, as much as we can, just because it hallucinates, it has errors, so I think that the best things that we can do is think of AI and the words accountable and the word responsible, really.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's move on to another common challenge that we've seen. And I know this is one that all our solution advisors can speak to at length: integration challenges. What we found in this year's State of CCM report is that more than half of organizations found integration challenges to be a major barrier to using AI in GRC, and nearly a quarter found those same integration challenges to be an obstacle to implementing continuous controls monitoring. So kind of regardless of what you're talking about to improve your compliance and risk posture, integration is really a major consideration for organizations as they're trying to modernize their programs. I think we've also found that technical teams supporting integrations often don't know exactly which compliance data is needed in which systems, and they often are needing more customization than many tools can provide. Gianna, do you want to share some of the tooling challenges that teams tend to see in GRC?
Sure. So, in my experience, the most effective and efficient compliance programs are closely tied to operational reality, which exists kind of within our tool set. So you have any given organization is going to have a suite of tools that they leverage to first just implement security across their organization. And then you add into that equation the different compliance frameworks, which we already talked about. And then in some cases, there's a specific tooling for each one of those frameworks. Some are, very purpose-built for FedRAMP or for SOC or for something like that. And then they might have some basic integration capabilities, but those integration capabilities tend to be whoever's part of their technology partner program, right? So they might be able to integrate with, 3 to 5 other technologies, most common technologies. And they can only do so, at a certain level of sophistication. So then on the flip side of that, then you have these large, or I guess more robust companies that can integrate a variety of different solutions for you, but they end up being like really custom integrations. And so what happens there is that, yes, while you're able to integrate with a variety of tools, those integrations are custom, and therefore the services required to establish and maintain those integrations end up, costing just as much or more than the solution itself. So it becomes really problematic because at the end of the day, we do want to be as close as we can to the source of the truth, right? But be able to bring that data into a platform in a fast and efficient way. And I feel like that's something that we do really well at RegScale.
Yeah, I think very specifically, when I hear what you're saying, Gianna, is around when my clients are coming to us and they're saying we want to integrate everything. I'm like, okay, what and why? Compliance is one of those finesse places where you do want to pull in the very specific things into the platform and be have a lot of oversight for that evidence, particularly when I think about integrations. To solve, that evidence collection process, I think that there's a lot of efficiency and growth that we can do there, but we do want to do that with finesse. Another type of integration that I find really exciting is that there is a new set of data that is coming out of a lot of cloud providers and also like a vulnerability scanning type technologies. In which I classify that as like the compliance data set. And that's where they are taking frameworks and taking like where they know they touch upon very specific things. So I think our vulnerability scanners, they like to touch upon those AU controls to make sure you're doing the right monitoring, things like that. In this 853, sorry, when I say AU controls, looking at being able to take that data into our platform intelligently to automate showing that you are doing the right things that are just like continuous background things, like sending all your SIEM logs, to the right technology. So those types of things in the compliance data set, I find a lot of excitement for those types of things because that's where we're really pushing the envelope and getting that automation to that next level for the industry.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. I think the end state is great. You get your integration up and running, and you get the data and your assets and vulnerabilities into the platform. Getting there can take some time. Compliance So the company usually has to go through an ATO process. That integration might be behind their firewall. So it does take some time to get the integration up and running, scoping the appropriate data. Is it bringing in too many assets? Is it bringing in too many vulnerabilities that are out of scope of the security plan? So fine tuning has to be done, but the end state of getting that automatic ingestion of data into the platform is definitely a plus and a time saver.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to move on to the final key challenge that we found in the report, and that is reporting. Um, what we're seeing is that organizations increasingly need to report at both the macro and the micro levels. So on the one hand, demonstrating enterprise-wide compliance posture, and then on the other, providing really granular details of specific implementations. One thing that we found complicates the problem is that the average organization this year reported that they're using 3 to 4 different GRC tools, which can really hinder sort of that unified reporting and visibility that companies are aiming for. In addition to that, we found that only about a quarter of organizations described their current compliance tool as providing either excellent or comprehensive ROI tracking. And another 19% said they have poor or limited ROI visibility. So really the amount of really solid reporting is still squarely in the minority. And this has just been a major obstacle as more and more boards are requesting that direct data access beyond sort of the traditional quarterly reporting that we're used to. Shannon, I'm wondering if you can kick us off with a little about what you're seeing around reporting requests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when I think about the history of reporting and what we've been asked to do, it kind of started with, being told you must comply. And I think it was NIST threw out an outline of a security plan document to be able to capture all of this information, but that is a recommended Word document. So we had organizations tracking in Word, which that is not necessarily tangible data that you can quickly query and look upon. So that next iteration of innovation and ended up being Excel. Once again, decently static in an Excel form, but you can more easily query and do some reporting based off of that, and a more automatic method with the Excel document. But what I'm really seeing is by the time that compliance teams are, where they need to be today, they're really itching for something even greater than that Excel doc, because then they have to move it back into a Word doc eventually, or there's a lot of high risk of somebody kind of coming and fat fingering a cell, and when you have a large compliance team, having 20 plus people into one Excel document becomes a little bit more risky in nature. So what we really want to see as an industry is being able to get this data in a more tangible way that we would do this type of reporting function. So, taking that data, putting it into a database that's queryable, that has auditing over, changes, things like that. But once we get it into that dynamic data form, then we can automatically run reports on our live databases and automatically send out, the PDF or the Word document that's needed at the end of the day for that security plan to enter to our regulatory bodies. So that's kind of where we were when compliance first emerged, and asking it for in a Word doc to the expectations today, and being able to report. And so I think to answer a little bit of Thomas's question in the chat of the why so slow, I think the organizations that are still stuck between that Word doc and Excel doc are really feeling that pain still today.
Yeah, I think it's 2026. We shouldn't waste our time formatting Word documents in Excel, right? I think the 3 to 4 different GRC tools bullet point here really resonates with a lot of companies, because we're at this point where different GRC tools excel at different things. So one might be good at maintaining policies and standards. Another one that might be good at preparing for an audit, or drafting implementation statements for a security plan, or bringing in vulnerability data. So we don't really have that coverall product that does everything where the whole entire company can use it. And that's why you're seeing a lot of data silos, as it says here, and fragmented data. Maybe this GRC tool has your security plan, but this one has your, vendor risk assessment. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at the first bullet there too, I think, when cybersecurity framework came out, that helped a lot of organizations establish that common lexicon for communicating cyber risk, up and down the chain. But I think we still have some communication gaps when it comes to, communicating with leadership and the board in general. I think this could be an indicator of some of those gaps. And I think there's also like there's some trust issues that we have. So the need to be able to, like, I think traditionally the board wouldn't want to get so granular but I think, everybody's just trying to get to the bottom of the problem so that, we can course correct. On the positive end of that, though, when talking about like board inquiries and stuff like that, I think it's refreshing to see more and more security and compliance leaders on boards of organizations. And so I think that there's also an increasing kind of like general interest in what is happening within an organization so that they can, to your point, well, like break down those silos and resolve the issues. But it is definitely still a challenge.
Yeah, wonderfully said. Thank you. I'd like us to switch gears now to some of our recommendations and roadmap suggestions, what we've seen work well for customers in our experience. Gianna, do you mind diving back in here?
Sure. So, I mean, I think some of these points we've made throughout, but, whether you're a large or small, cyber and compliance team, GRC automation is really a game changer. We've all seen those very sophisticated spreadsheets over the years, and people are really proud of those, as they should be. I never really learned how to develop all those macros, but, nothing saves you time and increases the accuracy like, bringing operational data into your compliance program. So pulling in that data from the security tools to pass and fail controls, automating risk indicators, process triggers, that accountability we talked about. So I think that leveraging a GRC automation is, I feel like it's just table stakes at this point, unless you are a very small company with a single, compliance framework. But even still, like having all those automated triggers to remind you of the things that you have to do to maintain your compliance after you've achieved compliance is still really important. So, as far as where to start, again, just kind of creating that linkage between your corporate documentation, your tooling, and your SSPs. We talked about it a little bit earlier. It's a great use for AI. Let's leverage what you've already done, what the policies and procedures that you've already socialized and done your due diligence for across your organization. Leave it to AI to summarize that and to let control implementation statements for you. Leave it to AI to let you know, hey, there's a new version of the compliance framework and you have some gaps. Why don't you update your policy to fill these gaps? So really connecting your documentation and your SSP. And then obviously we want to, identify the controls that you need for continuous monitoring. Not all controls require the same frequency and rigor of continuous monitoring. So you want to make sure that you've got the Goldilocks effect in your continuous monitoring, that everything is just right. You want to, really leverage your GRC and Kanban program to implement a kind of like a common sense Kanban approach that really kind of aligns to your existing compliance needs, and your organization specific risk management and risk tolerance programs.
Yep. For automating high impact controls, I think this is where our integrations really shine here. So use NIST for an example. If you look at your AC access controls and IA information assurance, you want to bring in compliance information that will do an assessment against those specific controls, and you want it done maybe weekly or monthly or biweekly. And this is where integrations come in, whether you're in GCP or AWS, have those assessments occur. And if they fail, they open an issue, but your security plan can be updated in real time, which is an awesome feature. So that's where I land on automating high impact controls.
Yeah, and wrapping it into that tile number 4, for our really advanced clients, they're looking at how do we bake compliance into our DevSecOps pipeline, so we're never releasing something potentially out of compliance. And I think that's a really next level type viewpoint of compliance, but something that we're getting closer to because we are putting this data into tangible form. So you can take parameters from RegScale and be able to enforce them, through open policy agents right into your pipeline. So it's one of those things that I think is really next level for organizations to be able to achieve that, happens after steps 1 through 3, and you're really looking to push the envelope. But essentially what you're getting at the end of the day is making sure that there are compliance checks in your DevSecOps pipeline, just like you would for security related issues. And so that you're more proactively looking at those potential problems and solving them before it goes to production. So really, really cool next level type place that we're starting to see clients reach.
Yeah, and Shannon, I think that's a great segue from the DevSecOps piece and the continuous compliance automation into some of the features we found to be kind of most valuable in the GRC automation journey. Let's move on. And Shannon, I'm gonna let you go ahead and kind of dive into some of these features.
Yeah, so I think everybody can read the different features, but I think these are key features that are making RegScale a differentiator in the market. When the clients are coming to us, they've tried a lot of other tools, and in some cases it's somewhat seemed like vaporware, and in other cases it's just the tool didn't grow with them in their complex environments. So where RegScale is really shining across the industry and across the market is for the larger entities with really complex multi-frameworked environments, trying to answer these questions on a very demanding level. That's where we're really shining because of our capabilities of being able to integrate with their tool sets to do some levels of automation, having that data in a tangible way for editing, updating, bringing in AI to be able to further elaborate and create some documentation for you. And then also that end result of reporting. And so ideally for our clients, what we see at the end of the day is there's effort to get into our platform and moving your data into our platform. That at the end of the day, your audit cycle should look like, okay, let me go through, let me run AI to review, where my status is for my security plan, go in very specifically and finesse, fix those items, look through the evidence, focus on what evidence isn't necessarily being automatically sent to the platform. So we're prioritizing that work. And then simply clicking 2 buttons to export your SSP and not having to draft up a Word document, which takes a lot of manual effort making those things perfect. And so at the end of the day, that's where I think that RegScale is really being a differentiator in our market space.
Absolutely. So I think a good compliance platform like RegScale should work for everybody in the organization, whether it's you're a compliance analyst or you're an executive, right? You can see dashboards as an executive, but at the granular level, you can be an analyst, basically drafting your security plan, collecting evidence, and all of that. So it has to work for everybody and not just a team in the broader compliance workflow.
Perfect segue, Will. So what, a lot of my customers are also, yes, they're using RegScale to achieve their own compliance and create efficiencies, but they're also, talked about it earlier, how everybody's looking for the easy button. And I think organizations, their security and compliance programs, we're seeing them really demonstrate their own value to their customers being either their business units or actual customers, by being able to relieve them of a large percentage of the security burden or security and compliance burden, as well as, still maintaining visibility. But I see, hear a lot about RegScale being both a, technology compliance enabler for a variety of different modernization activities.
Yeah, those are some great insights. I am wondering if you could speak a little more just to what the implementation and setup process might look like for a RegScale customer. What have you done with our clients in the past?
I can take this one. So as solution advisors, we are involved with setup, training, and then sign off, right? So we're that go-to person who answers questions from the team members that are in the platform. If they would need training on uh, setting up their integrations, we do that. But just understanding their process outside the platform and then mapping that in the platform. So we're with them every step of the way.
Yeah, anything else either of you want to add, or shall we move on to, we've got a lot of good questions coming in.
I guess when we all introduce ourselves, we didn't really cover what we do for RegScale. And it is that onboarding process for our clients. And so I will note that our platform, because it is allowing a lot of a lot of flexibility in being able to answer to a lot of different frameworks, there's a lot of customization available. And so we help design the solution so that the clients can see their processes into the platform as they're making that transition. One thing to know is that change is hard in general. And so moving from something that you're really comfortable with, and it might be clunky, it might be difficult, it might take a lot of time in Excel. Sometimes people are just really comfortable working with Excel because it's a really well-known tool. And so we're here to help that liaison and transition, provide you the training so you feel confident moving into our tool, as well as trying to find opportunities to reduce any sort of change to your process. And so you're making sure that even the language that the platform supports actually is.
Oh, poor Shannon. No, but just to kind of continue on that thread. Yeah, I mean, we really try to work with our clients to make sure that they have the necessary, the customizations that they're looking for, that they actually achieve those modernization goals that they have. But still while staying within the supportability of the platform, right? Because you can go into some platforms and they're highly customized, but they're very hard to sustain. But
I think where we kind of excel is we offer the ability to customize, but we have that baseline layer where you can come in. And if a customer wants a different label, maybe they don't want to call it a risk, they want to call it something internal, we can go in and change that. But it's flexible, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to hope that Shannon can get back online. But in the meantime, I think we've had a number of good questions come in. So looking at one of these questions, how has the integration of the current wave of AI tools influenced or improved the compliance process? That's kind of part one. And then secondly, what are some of the challenges around audits when it comes to these AI tools, like getting clarity on how the tool outputs are validated?
So I could take that. So we do have a native AI tool in our platform, RegML. We don't necessarily integrate with other AI products currently. Um, but as far as I think the second part was talking about challenges around audits when it comes to these tools. Uh, we don't really do validation right now with these AI integrations, but in the tool, you can draft statements, you can run RegML audits as well, but we don't do integrations with those things.
Wonderful. Got a fairly technical question on OSCAL as well. This one might be better answered offline just because it is complex, but I'm going to throw it out there, and we can speak to OSCAL at least a little bit because we are an OSCAL native platform. So the question is, if an organization adopts OSCAL as the authoritative layer, produces validated OSCAL packages upstream, can RegScale consume those OSCAL artifacts as is, preserve their authoritative state, and treat RegScale only as the system of record without overwriting or reauthoring the OSCAL content? And then kind of an additional question about APIs and integration. But does anyone want to tackle either that specific question or just speak broadly to how we use OSCAL in the process?
Do I have enough bandwidth? I'm sorry, I cut out there.
No, I think you're back.
Sorry. The Rio Grande, the power flickered and I got cut. But to kind of touch upon without going too technically detailed there, but I think that we can do a follow-up more specifically to this OSCAL answer because I would love to get some more technical expertise here. But from a RegScale compatibility standpoint, very specifically, we can work in OSCAL in regards to FedRAMP because FedRAMP is the one organization that has said, this is the way that we are going to take in data via OSCAL. So if there are standards in which that RegScale can model, then we have the successful capabilities and wiring to be able to take that data in and then also produce it right back out. Once we have the data into a database, it is dynamic and can be formatted into a lot of different ways. And so, if there's a specific framework that you're looking at outside of FedRAMP, I think RegScale would be very interested to hear more about how you want to work with that OSCAL type data.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, we will do a follow-up offline so we can answer that question in a little more detail. But that's a good overview of our work with OSCAL. We're also getting a couple of questions DM'd to us directly, so I want to make sure we surface a few of those. One of the questions is just what's a new or upcoming feature that you're excited about in the platform?
I can take this one. Framework Mapper, which will be a RegML feature, but we talked about this previously. If you have security plans in NIST or ISO, you can basically take implementation statements and evidence and contextualize it across different controls and different frameworks in real time.
I've got one. So, and it's current in its future. We rolled out the app builder this month. And this is the ability within your RegScale instance to create these smaller environments on the same database and everything, but just these smaller mini environments that can mirror a more large, complex organization. So if you have multiple tiers that need to do some level of reporting, we can accommodate in the platform. But where this is going in the future is the ability to more easily report up and down and like take slices at the specific levels that organizations want to see. So at that like more micro level for a more technical day-to-day analyst to that macro level for our board. So being able to manipulate our application for more of an enterprise level organization. And as I said, we had the first iteration of that go out this month. And we have future phases that are coming out very shortly to be able to enable some even cooler functionality as our platform grows.
And I would say also just our ongoing development in enabling organizations to kind of build their own integrations. A lot of our customers have some pretty sophisticated folks on their staff that just need the means to work with us and leverage their tooling in a way that traditionally hasn't been used for compliance, but we provide the platform on an ongoing basis, right? To maturing that capability over time. And I think it's providing a lot of value to our customers as far as increasing the integrations flexibility. Sorry.
Yeah, wonderful. I know we have a few more questions, but we are at time. So I would like to wrap up. I want to thank our panelists, Gianna, Shannon, and Will, for their expertise today. And I do want to thank all of our attendees for their time. We really appreciate you joining us. If you haven't done so, please do download the full State of CCM report. It's free. It's got dozens of additional data points that we didn't discuss today, but that do tell a lot about the trends in GRC automation. You can download using this QR code, or we also put the direct link in the chat. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us for further conversations. We've got some follow-ups to do on our end as well, but don't ever hesitate to get in touch. We are always happy to talk more. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.